Nobody wakes up one morning and decides they want to become addicted. Addiction usually begins earlier as a child's desperate attempt to survive emotional pain. If we only fight the addiction and never heal the child, we're treating the symptom and not the womb. Now, I like the word womb, but I prefer the word scar. Because once the womb heals, it's a scar and it remains forever. And that's what we're talking about. Now, what it said on my thumbnail was the scar remains, but not the guilt. That's what I want to talk to you about. Because we talk about the shame with addiction, and shame can keep you stuck. I sure was, but it wasn't the word shame. Shame is a little bit different than what I felt. I was in front of a therapist, oh gosh, at 20. I've been to so many therapists in my life, it's ridiculous. But every single one I've talked to, I've said, I've spent my life feeling guilty. I don't feel guilty anymore. Thank goodness, that's why I'm talking to all of you. Because I've researched it and I've got some answers and I don't have to feel guilty anymore. I'm so grateful. I was so tired of feeling guilty. I was guilty because I didn't have a penis when I was born. Yeah, that was it. I popped out and Mom was told right away, girl. And she was devastated. Glad that she could have a baby. It had taken her 6 years to get pregnant and have me. But really, really depressed. And 18 months after I was born, she gave birth to a very big, almost 10-pound boy. But he only lived for 4 days because her blood and my father's blood was incompatible, or they call it Rh negative blood. And Dad was B positive. That was in 1949. They didn't have, now they call it a vaccine, and they have afterward issues and all, and they didn't have any of that. They didn't have any of that. And my mother, having gone to nurses training, she never worked as a nurse, but she'd gone to nurses training, was really, really torn up over that. Because that was the boy they both wanted desperately. They wanted 6 sons. They knew each other only 28 days before they got married because it was wartime. And he saw her and flipped. He was 5'6" and she was 6'1". And he wanted 6 tall sons. That's what he wanted. And she never recovered. She couldn't give him those sons. She tried for 6 years before she had me, and then another 1.5 years before she had the boy. And by then she was 29. And I believe it was either 3 or 4 abortions that the military gave her because they didn't call them that. They called them desting and cleaning, a DNC. Because they knew she couldn't carry another child to be alive. They couldn't be alive because they didn't have the medication, the treatment that they have nowadays. They didn't know to drain all the baby's blood out and replace the blood. And she went into a bottle and never came out again. And it was really rough. It was really, really rough. I always felt guilty. Every time I went into a therapist's room, I said, I feel guilty. And they say, what of? And I have no idea. I just always feel guilty. My mother was constantly beating me. She beat me with yardsticks and rulers and thin switches and paddle balls after I broke them, and just about anything she could get her hands on. She tried not to get too many bruises because then she had to keep me home from school and put up with me all day too. Because her statement, and she never gave me any rationale. All she ever said, she screamed bloody murder, "You're impossible." And she'd tell people that, strangers. They'd say, "Isn't that a cute little girl? I bet she's smart." Or, "Isn't that a cute little girl? I love her dress," or something. And she'd say, "She's impossible." I have no idea. She never told me. I'd ask, and she says, "You're just impossible." And I think that it was because I was female and she'd lost a boy, and her whole thing with my dad was to have the sons, and he was Roman Catholic, so he wouldn't divorce. And her parents had divorced, and that may have been part of it too. I don't really know. And she was very embarrassed about having had parents who divorced. So maybe that was part of it too. But what I have done, and that's what I want to explain to you, I was stuck. I was really stuck. I lit as many as 4 packs of cigarettes a day. Yep. I was so hooked on nicotine, I didn't think I'd ever get off. It took me years. It was a real challenge. And I was stuck with therapists, and I was stuck with guilt, but I've gotten rid of it. I'll tell you how it works now for me. I don't know if this worked for you, but this, that's what I'm here for. I'm going to share what I know, what I've experienced, what other people have told me, so that you can decide if this would do you any good. Okay. My mother's family had a boy, and then a girl, and then a boy, with my 17-year-old grandmother married my 34-year-old grandfather. She was a French girl, and he was Scottish. And they had the 3 kids, and then she became a Christian Scientist, and she left him, and she died of breast cancer at 34, leaving him with the 3 boys. But she died after she left him. And he remarried, I believe my mother was about 6 or 7. She would never give me this information. She hated my grandmother, and I adored her. It's one of those family things. I think she was about 6 or 7 when he remarried, and she got pregnant. She was very late in life. She was nearly as old as he was. And she had my Uncle Stanley, who I absolutely adored. He was the closest thing to a brother I'd ever had, and I just absolutely adored him. And he died also at about 34, 33, 34. He was killed in a U.S. Air Force airplane. It was hard to pull all this together, but I finally did. That my mother lost her mother when she was about 6 or 7, and my grandfather remarried, and she spent most of her time in bed because she was pregnant quickly, and my mother always resented that, and so there was this combination of things. One, my mother hadn't had a mother to teach her anything because her mother left, and my grandmother was in bed a lot, and apparently my mother had nothing to do with caring for my Uncle Stanley. And so it's very mucky because she wouldn't ever talk about it, ever. So, and she fell out of a jump seat when she was 3 and broke her tailbone and crushed areas of her spine in her neck, and broke off the tailbone inside of her. And nothing was done about it, of course. This was a lot of years ago. And she froze her legs during the Depression because she was so tall she couldn't get stockings. So there's this woman who was a girl who I have tons of empathy for. I have so much empathy for all that went through her life, and the fact that she became, when my biological grandmother left, my mother became the woman of the house and took care of her older brother and her younger brother's lunches, and helped with dinners and all these things that grandfather taught her to do because he didn't want to do it. And it was just real tough. She felt very put upon. And then when Grandpa remarried, she felt put upon because the woman stayed in bed because that's what the doctors told her to do because they thought she was going to lose the baby. But then she becomes my mother, and she didn't want me when I was born. She kept me in a drawer from a chest of drawers. She wasn't happy at all that she had me, and she became a heavy drinker as soon as she lost the boy, and every time she'd have an abortion it would be worse. And by the time I left home at 15, she was drinking, taking a 12-ounce glass and filling it halfway full of vodka and then the rest of the way full of sangria, and that's what she'd be drinking all day unless she was ironing, and then it would be beer. So she was always drunk because my father was always gone. My father the marriage was, like I said, they knew each other 28 days. And he took every assignment he could to be away from my mother. One time for an entire year. And it was difficult because I was the unwanted roommate, so to speak. And it was a beating all the time. It was always about a beating. And so I carried that guilt because I was always wrong, always wrong. She even kept a list of everything I did wrong, even for a year. He was usually gone 3 months. They're called TDY, temporary active duty. And she would keep a list of everything I did wrong, and then he had to beat me when he came home for everything I'd done wrong, even though she'd already beat me. So it was a very, very weird household. Very, very weird. Of course, he drank when he was home, but he never do anything like that if he was on call or anything, because he was an immigrant. Well, his family was immigrated from Poland, and Dad took his military service extremely seriously. He was very patriotic. In fact, I wanted to be a JAG lawyer. But I was raped a few days after I turned 15, and I was completely naive, completely naive. I didn't know how babies were put inside of a woman. I just didn't know anything. She told me nothing. She taught me to make banana bread and how to iron my father's shirts, and that was about it. She didn't teach me anything. She didn't read to me. She didn't hold me. I was just a roommate she didn't want. And so there were a lot of gaps. And so I married as quickly as I could to get away from it because she took my son. She lied to me. She told me the state wouldn't let me keep my son. And so she said I'd be incarcerated if I kept my son because it was against the law. So she took my son and didn't want me to have anything to do with him because she adopted him. And it was just one series of lies after another. And that's why I think as soon as I became an adult, it was all about truth. Everything was all about truth. But I married the first person who asked me. I was just barely 16. And he only married me because he wanted me to have a child so he didn't have to go to the draft. So what I'm saying is, if you have shame, or if you have guilt about your addiction, first recognize that what you had in your home is normal. And that's why I married an alcoholic, spoiled, rotten kid who was physically abusive. He beat the crap out of me all day. He beat me when I was pregnant. I mean, all these pieces come together later in life. And so I don't bore you to death. I will get off now. But if you want to talk to me about this, yes, you can do it down here. But you can also meet me on Skool, SKOOL. It'll be at the end of this video, the information. And you can talk to me one-on-one. There's no charge. There's no charge to register. There's no charge to enter, nothing. Because I feel like the reason I don't feel guilty and the reason I'm making these videos is because I was very sick as a child. I had rheumatic fever. I was expected to die between 5 and 30. I didn't. Both my mother and my grandmother had breast cancer. I was expected to die by 50. I didn't. I'm here because I'm supposed to talk to you. That's what I think. I think the universe said, ha! We're gonna take that one's ability to talk like she does in the classroom, and she's gonna be there for people when the world goes crazy. And you know, the world is crazy now. So now let's play the game. Okay, like and subscribe. That's what everybody's supposed to say. It becomes a recording, and I'm really sorry. I don't need to say that. It's up to you. And come and see me if you want to talk. That's up to you too. Thank you.